The man was discharged from the military. He walked all the way from Ukraine back to Moscow on foot. When he passed through a small town, he had no idea there was a rule here. All outsiders entering the town must undergo a full search. He handed over his documents, but the other party ignored them, insisting that he take off his backpack. After a thorough search, nothing was found. But at this moment, the police officer noticed something under his jacket. He lifted his clothes to reveal the knife at his waist. This scene shocked the two police officers, so they immediately took defensive actions. But the man remained calm, claiming that he had a knife license. But the police officers insisted that he take off the knife. The man had no choice but to comply, handing over both his belt and the knife. When the police officers took it out and looked, it turned out to be a sharpened Nepalese army knife. Seeing this, the two arrested the man without asking any questions. When his hands were cuffed, the man suddenly felt incredible. It was the first time he had encountered such a thing, so he was in a daze for a moment. But the two police officers thought he was deliberately provoking them. They glanced around and found no one nearby. Then they raised their hands and prepared to teach the man a lesson. But this speed of attack was useless against him. After several failed attempts, one police officer became impatient. He took out his pistol and signaled him to get in the car obediently. Since the other party insisted, the man had to cooperate to see what they were up to. But just as he got in the car, a police officer suddenly hit him hard on the back with a stick. It felt like hitting a steel plate. If this were a battlefield, the other party would have lost their life long ago. The man was taken back to the police station and handed over all his personal belongings. Finally, he was locked in a cell to await punishment. The squad leader soon learned that his men had been provoked. With his personality, he could definitely not stand it, so he immediately went to the cell to find the man. He picked up his baton to avenge his men. Anyone who dared to bully his police officers must pay the corresponding price. But what the squad leader didn't know was that the more he enjoyed himself now, the worse he would feel later. Just then, a police officer suddenly ran in. It turned out that the deputy police chief wanted to see the arrested man. The squad leader had to hold back his anger for the time being. After arriving at the office, the deputy police chief began to ask who he was, but the man didn't want to pay attention to him at all. He was arrested for no reason, and his documents were not even carefully checked. He really didn't know how they usually did their jobs. At this moment, the police chief walked into the room. He said several serious criminals had escaped during transfer, so they had to be careful with outsiders recently. Seeing the unfamiliar man in front of him, the police chief stepped forward curiously to observe. Then he asked for the man's documents to check. When he saw them, everyone was shocked. The documents showed that he was Major Shamanov. How could such a person be arrested here? The police chief flew into a rage, questioning the police officers why they didn't check the documents before arresting him. On the surface, the police chief was handling the matter in the correct way. In fact, it was all his fault that the police officers acted like this. Then the police chief returned his personal belongings, but he took out an MP3 and played with it. Then he casually put the MP3 on the desk. It was this move that brought disaster to the police station. Although the two were not in the same system, their ranks were almost the same. The police chief smiled obsequiously, but Shamanov observed the office environment. The furnishings and alcohol here were all valuable. It seemed that the police system in this small town was already very corrupt. He had no time to waste time with such people. He felt bored even staying for one more second. Shamanov walked out of the office. He ran into a beautiful woman head-on. The two looked at each other subconsciously. The woman's name was Nasva. She was a waitress at the town's cafe. Today she came to apply for an extension of her business license. She quietly handed over an envelope. There was no need to say what was inside. Under normal circumstances, she could leave after putting down the envelope. But now the police chief was in a bad mood. Nasva had come at a very bad time. In this small town, the police chief was like a god. There was nothing he couldn't get, and no one dared to refuse him. At the same time, Shamanov, who had just walked out of the police station gate, habitually reached for his MP3. Then he remembered that he had left the MP3 on the police chief's desk, so he turned around and prepared to go back to get it. Shamanov walked straight into the office, just in time to see the police chief bullying Nasva. In fact, this matter had nothing to do with him. He could leave the town as long as he got his MP3. But when he saw the girl's helpless eyes, the blood in Shamanov's bones was aroused. The police chief told him to leave quickly, after saying that he even prepared to push Shamanov out. But it was already too late.